Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the UCAN Run Show. I'm Varan with UCAN and thrilled to be joined today by Molly Bookmyer, one of the superstar athletes for Team UCAN. Molly, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Molly, you are coming to us from where today?
From Columbus, Ohio.
Fantastic. So as you guys can see in the background, it's always running weather if you're a runner, but really starting to look like running weather right now, which is great. Molly, we were really excited to have you on and be able to have a conversation with you to really talk about your story and how running's been significant to you. You've had some really tough circumstances in your own personal life, and you've been able to run, through that and been able to bounce back. Can you just kind of, take us through that, and then we'll certainly talk about that more.
My senior year of college, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I don't really remember having a ton of symptoms, but just one thing kind of led to another. And after doctors doing some tests, they found that I had a brain tumor in my ventricle in my brain, and they found it. So my senior year was 2013, and they ended up having. They watched it for 2 years. They did a couple different tests just to make sure that it wasn't cancerous. They did like a spinal tap, and they were able to tell from that test that they didn't think it was cancer, which obviously was great news. But just as they followed it for a couple of years, it was growing and growing. And so in January of 2015, they decided that it was time to remove the tumor. And so I underwent surgery. I think the surgery was probably like 9 or 10 hours that I was under, and I was in the hospital for almost a week, and I was out of work for about 8 weeks, and then ultimately I went back to work, and then I found out, or and then April, I ended up having really bad headaches. So much so that I would wake up in the middle of the night and almost be like puking just because it was they were so painful. And they found that I had something called hydrocephalus, which is just a lot like it's called water on the brain, so just a lot of pressure built up. So they ended up transporting me. So I was in Columbus at the time, and my surgeons were in Cleveland. So they transported me by ambulance from Columbus to Cleveland, and they ended up doing surgery that weekend. So I think I was in the ER on Saturday, and they did surgery that Sunday night just to relieve the pressure. And so I think, coming off of that, I wanted to get healthy again. And once I was clear to run, I started running slowly and taking my time to get back into running. And I got back into work, and I was running and trying to just get healthy. And then that fall of 2015, I was running on a treadmill after work because I was working full time. And I ended up having a seizure, and I don't really remember anything from it. The first thing I remember is waking up in an ambulance, but I was super fortunate that there were some other people in the gym with me who were able to call 911, and they took me by ambulance, and they took me to a local hospital. And ever since then, I've had to be on seizure medicine, but I've been healthy ever since. So I think that's fabulous. And I'm obviously very fortunate that my story ended the way that it did. And so after that seizure, after a couple months, I started running again, and was healthy and happy. And then I was set to marry my husband, my now husband, in August of 2017. And we got married in August. We went on our honeymoon, and then we came back from our honeymoon, and he kept complaining of back pain. And so I told him, he went to the doctor, and ultimately he found out that he had testicular cancer, and he ended up having to have 2 surgeries and chemo. And he finished all of his treatments at the end of February of 2018. But I think, through everything, running has just kind of been a part of my life. It's been something that I can turn to when I just need some time to myself to think through things. It's kind of been there if I need to grieve about anything. It's how I made a lot of friends. So, like, I would go on runs with my friends and talk through the different things that I was going through. And so, and it made me feel healthy in times that, maybe other parts of my body didn't feel as healthy. So running's been huge in my recovery from my own health issues, and also just through the grieving process of my husband's issues.
That's really incredible, and really inspiring to see just personally what you've been able to overcome. And I'll do a little bragging for you, which we'll get into. But just recently, this past weekend, kind of to bounce all the way back and be able to finish third at the USATF 25K championships, or if not this past weekend, just recently. That kind of, you talked about, how far you've been able to come to be healthy and to run again, but you're really doing it at an extremely high level. Having also, qualified for the Olympic marathon trials in Houston. When did you kind of realize to yourself after the injury that, hey, I'm still able to run at a very high level? Because you ran collegiately, right? So you kind of competed at a high level in college, and then you weren't sure probably if you were going to be able to do that.
Yeah, so I took some time off and I just ran casually for a really long time. I joined a local running group after college and kind of through all my health issues. And I think being a part of that has really helped me, stay focused and always want to have a goal. I'm very goal driven and goal oriented. So I think that's always been something that I want to do. And then I think the big turning point was after seeing my husband go through all of his health issues. It was that thing where it's like, if I'm going to run, I want to give it my all and I want to be the best that I can be. And so I, finally got back and decided to take it really seriously. And that led me to run a 2:46 marathon in Grandma's in June of last year. And I think after seeing that I can run a 2:46, I said, all right, I think that OTQ is within my reach. And ever since then, I've kind of never turned back and just want to keep running and just want to see how good I can get. Life's so short. It's worth it to yourself to give yourself a chance.
When did you run your first marathon? Did you run your first marathon prior to going through your health issues, or was it after that?
I ran my first marathon leading up to my first brain tumor. It's kind of one of those things that it was just a bucket list thing. It was just, I wanted to say, I wanted to run a marathon. I wanted to complete a marathon. I didn't know how things were going to turn out after my surgery. You have to sign all that paperwork that says you can have all these complications. So it was just something I wanted to do. So yeah, I completed the Columbus Marathon the October before my surgery.
So for anybody, that first marathon, it's such a memorable experience, right? And such a, like you said, a bucket list item. It's, you build up to it, you kind of remember all the struggles and the pains that are new types of pains when you're training for a marathon. What was that experience like, going through all the first time marathon stuff, and then also just from a health standpoint, going through what you were going through?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think running really helped me just because I kind of forgot about a lot of like the health issues. I didn't talk about it very much. Nobody really knew that I was going to have brain surgery 3 months after my marathon. So it was just, again, it kind of helped with all that grieving process. It helped a lot. But yeah, training for your marathon, it was a big deal for me because I wasn't running as fast as I was in college. I was just kind of doing it for a social aspect, but I learned a lot. Definitely, it was a big learning curve to run a full marathon. It takes a lot of time. But I wouldn't change a thing. I ran it in my hometown. I was part of the group and I met a lot of friends through the process. So I loved everything about it.
So you then had surgery in 2015, and like, how soon after, like, do you remember in the aftermath of that, kind of wondering to yourself, or having a goal of like, oh, I want to get back out and do a run again? Like, how much of that was something you were focused on, or how did that go about, where you kind of built up the itch to get back after it?
Yeah, so I think I just wanted to be healthy again. So that's why I started running again. I don't think I was really, so my second surgery was in April of 2015, and I don't think I was really able to start running again until that August. And then that August, I decided we had the Columbus Marathon in the fall, and there's a half marathon. So I decided, again, I'm really goal oriented. And so it just helps me if I can set a goal. So I decided to set a goal to run the Columbus Half Marathon, just to have something to train for, something to look forward to, and give me a reason to get out the door every day. And so that's what I did. I started running slowly, not, probably no more than like 30 miles a week, just to go run that half marathon and say that, I came back and was able to complete a race again.
At what point did it go from that feeling, what you just described, to like, hey, I'm trying to shave, seconds, or I'm trying to shave a minute here, a minute there off my time. I'm trying to make these, really small incremental improvements where, like, obviously what you did from going from having surgery and then running again and then even being able to, run a half marathon or a marathon, that's a huge accomplishment and a huge challenge. But, also what you're trying to do now, where it's like you're already running at a high level and trying to make these incremental improvements is also a huge challenge, so when did it kind of switch where it was like, hey, this is something that I can really push to a different level?
Yeah, so I said that I joined that group. So I joined a running group, part of Fleet Feet here in Columbus, and they had me do a VO2 max test. And so I completed the VO2 max test, I think, probably like the summer of 2016. And when I got the results back, it was just something that indicated that my VO2 max was really high. And so it gives you like different predictions, and it gave me predictions of what it thought I could run a marathon or a half marathon in. And they were a lot faster than what I was running. And so it was just kind of that thing. It says, hey, like, I feel like my body is capable of doing more. And I just want to see how good I can get. And I think that was kind of the turning point where it's like, hey, I think I have something that I'm gifted with, and I don't want to waste it anymore. When you spend a lot of time in the hospital, you realize how short life can be.
And for you, you kind of talked about both your own challenges as well as what your husband went through, and you obviously went through that with him. You were able to use running to help yourself and to kind of motivate yourself. You said a few times that you're a goal oriented person. What was it like, on the flip side of things, where it was like you were healthy enough to run this time around, but you're still kind of going through a lot of those same things, right? You're in the hospital. How did running help you, or was there any difference in terms of maybe like how you used running or how you viewed running the second time around?
Yeah, so I would actually say watching my husband go through all of his surgeries and his treatment was a lot harder than having myself go through them, because when I was going through all my health issues, I knew how I was feeling and I knew what I was up to that day. And it's very difficult to see somebody that you love in pain. So I really, really, really struggled with that. And so to me, running was kind of like that time where I could get away and I could just kind of do something for myself, take care of myself, instead of always having to worry about him. I had to make sure that I was also taking care of myself so I could make sure I was taking care of him. And that was running to me. Running was how I was able to think through things, take care of myself, so that when I came back to my run, I was able to help him through his day.
Yeah, that's that's like, it's really kind of unfortunately perspective that you have, but kind of that perspective of being able to see it from both sides of the coin. It is kind of interesting to hear you talk about the differences in how you use running in both situations. So Molly, so for you now, like, as the goals have gotten bigger, and you just recently qualified for the Olympic marathon trials in 2020 at the Houston Marathon earlier this year. I'm sure there's different tweaks you've made in terms of your training and your approach, and certainly with the marathon, nutrition's a big part of that. For you as a marathoner, like, what were the things that were hard about fueling? What were there a few things that kind of, as you were doing more marathons or as you were trying to improve, you said, hey, a few of these things are like something I need to work on or I need to figure out?
Yeah, totally. So to me, when I think of a marathon, there's three things that are really important. Number one is training, one is the mental aspect, and the third thing is nutrition. And nutrition is such a hard thing to figure out. I really struggled with it. I had a lot of issues where I had stomach issues in the middle of my runs, in the middle of races. I originally was going for my OTQ to get my time for the trials in CIM in December, and I ran that race, and all leading up to the race, I was fueling with UCAN, and I thought I had this plan laid out, but for some reason, I don't know if it was the stress or the nerves or something, I took UCAN before the race, but I switched to my gels a lot earlier than I planned to switch to them, and Unfortunately, I ended up having to drop out at mile like 18 because my stomach was just torn apart. I actually had to like stop to go to the bathroom. Like it was just really hard, and I mean, obviously, I was devastated because I worked so hard to get myself to where I thought I could qualify to the trials. But I was really fortunate in the fact that I met somebody, Katie from UCAN, at the expo, and she was incredible because she asked me how the race went afterwards, and I kind of just explained the situation. I said, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know why I did this, but, for some reason I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my fueling, and I ended up having to drop out. And so, we just talked through things, and she was awesome. And I was able to turn around, and 6 weeks later, perfected my nutrition and really trusted UCAN to trust it to like fuel me through a lot more of my race. And it resulted in my OTQ in Houston 6 weeks later. And then, ever since then, I've obviously relied 100% on my UCAN before the races, and it's made a world of difference. Having those stomach issues, it's honestly, I think for any runner can relate. It's the worst feeling. It's the worst feeling when you're out there and you have to stop to go to the bathroom. Like nobody wants that. And finding something that, doesn't make you do that is honestly life-changing.
So it's really interesting to kind of hear, that trust element of using something new, and kind of, we're so inundated, especially in marathoning, with like people just feel like, okay, it's a gel every 20 or 30 minutes, right? So if you're doing something different and you're hearing everybody's doing something, or a lot of people are doing something a certain way, or you've always done something a certain way, you kind of start, especially in a race situation, you might start to question that approach. But it's interesting, again, to hear that you having the experience kind of doing it both ways, and in a pretty short turnaround too, where you were able to put it to the test in some different situations.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of like, you got to run your own race. So not only do you got to run your own race, you also got to fuel your own race. Like you got to do you. And for me, it's UCAN.
That's really good. I like how you said that. So, how did it first come on your radar? So you talked about, kind of having some GI issues, with gels and with, kind of with the mid-run fueling, and one of the key elements of UCAN is that longer lasting, slower burning energy, where you really don't have to take in as much, and it's going to digest a lot easier from a preload standpoint. Were you introduced to it because you were somebody that was struggling with, like, what should I eat before and during?
Yeah, so I have a couple of friends who work for New Balance and other runners, and so they heard of UCAN, so they kind of told me about it. I think honestly, more people than who want to admit it, runners. I think everybody has some stomach issues when they're running. That those gels are really hard on your stomach, and so it's something that it just kind of came up in conversation, and they said, hey, you should try this. So I started trying it. I used it for my build up for my first marathon back after my husband's issues for the Grandma's Marathon, where I ran at 2:46, and I mean, I fell in love with it then, and so I think just that community of runners is, you learn a lot.
You're in training when you're fueling up for a big long run. Kind of take us through your routine. What might you eat, before a big workout, and then how does UCAN fit into the picture in that pre-fueling part of it?
Yeah, so normally for my long runs in the morning, I always make my UCAN the night before. I just like to kind of like mix it up, leave it in the fridge the night before. I think when it's cold, I don't know, it just goes down really smoothly. So I always prepare for my long runs and my workouts the night before. And I always, I wake up and I take UCAN probably about a half an hour to 45 minutes before I start my hard workout. And that's just enough time to, I take it, then I can get changed and get ready, go to the bathroom one last time, and then head out, and I'm ready to go and good to go to get my workout in.
Awesome. It's a great inside look at what Molly does to fuel up. So one of the other things you talked about, with the marathon, I think you said three things, and nutrition being one of them, but you also talked about, the mentality or the mental side of running the marathon and training for a marathon. Do you use what you've been through in your life and what you've overcome with health, both you and your husband, is that something that you use when things get tough in the marathon at all? Like, is that part of what you do to dig deep and push through, or do you have other mental tricks that you kind of rely on to get through the tough moments in the marathon?
Yeah, so I actually I really got into reading Dina Castor's latest book. It talks a lot about the mental aspect of running, and something that I really associated with for this spring season was the word belong. I've never felt like I belonged in these big races before because I've always, I came back from a lot of health issues, and my husband was had a lot of health issues, and then I had to drop out of a race. That doesn't make you feel super confident in your running abilities. And so I just wanted to go to the start line and feel like I actually deserved to be there. I knew I deserved to be there because I worked really hard. And so I have a technique where I come up with kind of like a mantra or a saying that kind of makes me that relates to me for that race or that training season. And for me, this spring season, it was belong. And so I know I wrote the word even on my arm before the USA 25K championships, because it was my first US championship race. And I knew I was going to be lining up with a lot of people that I follow on Instagram, and that I look up to them, and I'm in the same race as they're in, and so I just wanted to feel like I belonged, and so I just wanted to prove to myself that I put in the work, and so whenever things got tough, I just looked down at my arm and kind of remembered everything that I did.
So as you look ahead, Molly, you qualified for the 2020 Olympic trials, and obviously, as we've talked about in this conversation, you've also come back from so much from a personal standpoint. When you think about setting your goals, and like you said, now you have bigger goals, and a lot of them are very probably performance oriented. Are you still kind of like living in the moment and thinking of that, or do you still find yourself sometimes being like, wow, I'm just thankful I'm doing this. Like, I can't believe I'm even like in a position where I'm thinking about the Olympic trials or thinking about, whatever you're thinking about that might be bigger than that.
Yeah, so you honestly just kind of gave me chills. I think I will always have performance goals just because I'm so goal oriented, but the reason I run is because I just want to see how good I can be. And I think I told you, I fell in love with the sport because we lived less than a mile from a national park. And so I never want to lose sight of that. And I never want to lose sight of kind of the naive, the reason why I started running, the love of it, that kind of fuels me. So yeah, I just think I will always have those performance goals, but I also, I want to remember how lucky I am to be here. I want to give back to the younger generation, the kids, the younger girls growing up who might be going through some tough things. Just because I think that's what it's all about. It's all about the community that you're a part of and the community of runners and supporting each other and helping other people overcome their obstacles as well.
And, as in recent weeks, you've had a really great kind of breakthrough performance, and you've got a really nice feature about you in women's running. Have you had people reach out to you and kind of express both their support as well as kind of letting them know that they gain strength from your story? You talked about, wanting to be able to give back. Have you felt just through your story and getting your story out there that just you've been able to just kind of do some of that already?
Yeah, I think some of it, I actually tomorrow, there's a local brain tumor 5K that I raised money for. So I'm going to that race tomorrow. So I think that's huge. And I got the opportunity to be part of Girls on the Run, their 5K, which is huge. I love being part of Girls on the Run. I would love to get more involved. And so, yeah, I think, and a lot of other people have reached out and just have expressed, their support and, said congratulations, which means a lot. Even my high school coaches and stuff that I talked to some, which is kind of cool, it kind of all comes full circle, which I'm incredibly thankful for everybody who has given me support.
Well, that's great, Molly. Well, we're super excited for you. Just talking to you today, it sounds like you've got big plans ahead. So excited to follow along. How can folks who are inspired by your story, who are curious to see what you're going to do next, what's the best way for people to follow along and be part of your journey?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can follow me. My handle is Molly Bookie. So please follow along on the journey. I hope I can help, and if I can help anybody in any way, just, I love to help. So just reach out, and I'm excited to share my journey, and love to share my fueling techniques too. So if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out with that too.
Got to take her up on that. She runs really fast, and we could all learn a thing or two from how she feels. Well, Molly, thanks so much. It was really great to spend some time and chat with you. Really enjoyed it. Best of luck moving forward, and we'll look forward to doing this again with you soon.
Great, thank you.